All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of the Potter Buchanan Show with Jeff Quinn. I'm going to read directly from the exact script on the intro, so this is going to be good. You're going to get a real good perspective here. Today's guest is someone who embodies strength, not just in the gym, but in life. Jeff Quinn is a world-class personal trainer, nutrition coach, and faith-driven entrepreneur who's passionate about helping people invest in their bodies, their future, and their souls. He's built a career transforming lives through fitness and nutrition. He's a strong believer in financial sovereignty through Bitcoin. And most importantly, he's a man who gives all glory to God. In this episode, we're diving into how these 3 pillars, fitness, Bitcoin, and faith, all connect to one mission, becoming the person God created you to be. That's a heck of an intro, buddy.
Yeah,
Jeff,
yeah. Thank you for that.
Welcome to the show.
I'm here, man.
I wrote that on my own. I did. That was hand scribed.
That definitely describes everything we're going to go over today and everything I'm about. So I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, for sure. So I think people ask, what's the podcast about? It's about life. It's about people. Like, I got laid off from my job a month ago. So I want to talk to people doing different things in different industries and like how they've seen success and then what's their actual life like. I think the human connection is something we're getting farther and farther away from, like as people.
Absolutely.
More AI taking over, things like that. So like personal training specifically, like we've been friends forever. I've never, like you are a personal trainer. I know what that is. You help people work out. I've never actually asked a single thing. And this is what like guys do.
Yeah.
Like we never ask about each other's personal lives. It's just like we say dumb stuff to each other for 8 hours or however long we hang out and then we go home.
Yeah.
But like, how did you get into personal training? Like, where did it start? And how long have you been in like the game?
So I've been training for about 15 years now. I was in college for criminology, psychology, and philosophy. And around 18, 19, I started just training my own body on my own in college. You know, as we got into college, we had a couple classes a day, but then the rest of the day was yours. And after leaving sports in high school, I realized I was getting sort of lethargic and I just needed that physical outlet, right? Something healthy. And as I started training myself, I really fell in love with it. And I'm sort of a nerd. So anything I start doing, I really dive into it and get the deep dive. But what happened is when I was training myself really in a difficult manner, I actually started to faint, like either mid-exercise or after exercise.
Oh.
And I went to the doctors and they were like, hey, you're pre-diabetic, right? Which means that my fasted blood glucose was about 99. Now, for reference, 100 is diabetic, which means every time I ate a meal, my blood glucose went up and I was in a range of diabetes. And so what was happening during training is my blood sugar was dropping. I would get low blood sugar and I would essentially white out. And the doctor said to me, you know, just keep some Gatorade on hand. It'll get your blood sugar up and you'll be fine. And I really sort of wasn't satisfied with that answer because it seemed like it was sort of putting out the smoke without dealing with the fire. And I went on a deep dive of really understanding that our modern American diet really breeds sort of sickness and, you know, just overall unwellness. And in that deep dive, I found sort of the ketogenic diet, which essentially just means that you're fueling through fat. And over about a 2-year period, your body completely changes. So my cells learned how to fuel themselves, not just with glucose, but with fat or ketones. And in doing that, I was able to get my body in a much more healthy range from like my fasted blood glucose. I stopped fainting and my brain sort of became superpowered. And so that's how I dove into the nutrition side of training. And once I went into that rabbit hole, I realized that I didn't want to be, you know, a cop or a lawyer, which is where that criminology degree was going to lead me.
Yeah.
So after, you know, $120,000 and 4 years at Merrimack College, which was a great school, I transferred and I went to a new major, exercise physiology. And I ended up getting my degree in exercise physiology. And I've been a trainer ever since.
Wow. And that's basically, do you need a full-time degree to become a personal trainer?
You don't. You can actually get a weekend certification. So the good and bad thing about the personal training industry is anybody can do it. But as a consumer or a client, you really got to look out for the person you're working with. You know, look at their credentials, maybe talk to some people, get some referrals, because it's really easy to get into the space. But just kind of like any industry, that means we have some really good personal trainers and strength coaches. And then we have some that, you know, maybe moonlight or just like aren't up to par with what they're promising people.
Yeah. Kind of like real estate game, right? Like how many people of our own friends, no shade to anybody, have become like real estate? Like people get it and they like there's a couple referrals around them maybe, but they don't actually are doing the job. It's
Right.
just like something they did to do.
Yeah, I think the barrier to entry is just so low. And, I think, yeah, some people find it a moonlighting hobby and some people look at it for a full-time career. I train some great real estate agents that are actually, I train the top real estate agent in the state by money, like total, dollars
Yeah.
in sales, which is really cool. And she's amazing. Her cousin is also a real estate agent, and they are great real estate agents. I would use them anytime. And then there's some other people, I think like any industry that just, aren't up to what they promise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, when we bought our house, I worked with a great one. Shout out Mary Baker. She was excellent. So to get started, right? Like you get your degree, how many clients or like what's the bar for success, right? Where you can do this as like a career, right?
Yeah.
Because like Massachusetts is a very expensive place to live. Like now more than ever. Like back when you started, like things were semi-affordable.
Mhm.
But like what's the bar for you being successful? Like, do you track like I need X clients to make X? Or is it more like I need to have a personal relationship. Like I don't want to have a bad relationship with my clients and just take on too many just to try to like fill my pockets. Like where is that balance? Like what does that look like for
Yeah. So I think that luckily for me, um, I've always sort of defined success as the ability to do something you love that also helps others and lets you earn a living. And actually, the Japanese have a great word for this. It's called your ikigai. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And I remember learning that in philosophy before I became a trainer and thinking like, wow, how amazing would that be to have a career that helps others, something you love, and you can make a living doing it. And so I was a lot younger, right? I didn't initially look for financial success, and I still don't. I think that in a lot of avenues of employment where you're working with people, if you focus on doing right by them and helping them, the money is going to come.
Yeah.
It might not come at first. It took me, gosh, I shadowed for like 2 years after I even got my certification and degree, and just followed other coaches and learned as much as I could. And then it probably only took me another 2 years to like fill my book, to have a full-time
Yeah.
schedule. Um,
And what are you looking at like a week? Are you 40 hours? Are you more than 40 hours?
yeah, I'm closer to like 50 to 60
Yeah.
hours a week. Yeah, it's a grind for sure, but it's something that I love to do. So I don't know who said it, but if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life,
Yeah.
right? So
No. 100%.
yeah,
I mean, you're getting out there and you love to be active in general. So like you're doing that every single day.
yeah,
I think the path for most people is like desk job, 40 to 60 hours. Like, let's do this. And some people are really passionate about it. And I've seen like, I was in sales, like seen great salespeople, but I would say 65% are just there every morning. How you doing? Living the dream. They're not living the dream. It's like almost just like the monotone living the dream and the flicker's gone behind their eyes. So like, it's great that you got to do something you love.
yeah. Very blessed in that manner, that God led me down a path for sure, that I was able to do something I'm good at, that I enjoy doing, and that I can earn a living off of. Yeah.
So what's the Jeff Quinn intake, right? Like I'll come to you.
Yeah.
I wanna be trained. Like what is I'm I'm a novice, right? Like I've worked out a little bit. I eat standard American diet. Like what does that look like? What do you start with?
Well, the first thing we do is essentially sit down, go over your goals. Like, why are you coming to me?
Yeah.
For a lot of guys, maybe they're getting married soon. Same thing with women. Maybe something has happened in their life, like maybe their father or somebody they love has gone through a cardiovascular event or something like that, or maybe they just went through a rough breakup, right? And a lot of people come to me, especially younger people. And they're looking for the aesthetic, right? They just kind of
Yeah.
want to change how they look naked, right? And that's great. But what I really try to drill into them is that this is something that is going to give you sort of physical freedom the rest of your life. So along with my clients' goals, I'll sort of meet them halfway with where I think they should be doing, right? So they give me like, I want a six pack. And I'm like, okay, well, that might not be totally reasonable for your body type and to keep you happy, right? Having a six pack drops your body fat percentage so low that a lot of times your hormones dip, you lose your libido. It's not such a good thing. So we kind of find that happy place with your goals as a client, and then really what I think that you need given like certain assessments. Like we'll go through basically a cardiovascular assessment, strength, mobility, that kind of stuff. And then I sort of fill the gaps with what you want and what I think you need. Yeah.
Okay. So a six pack actually is like somewhat genetic. Like you think it's on like everybody wants a six pack, right?
Yeah,
Or the
yeah.
majority, but like that's not always in the cards.
Yeah, it's not. It's really a lot of it, like you alluded to, is genetics. Obviously, anyone can get their body fat percentage low enough, right, to show a six pack. The problem is that like for myself, right, I like to be about 12% body fat. When
Yeah.
I go lower, I notice a substantial dip in things like my libido, right? And as for men, that's sort of like your marker for overall health, right? Like if you're not into your girlfriend or your wife or whatever it is, then something's missing. And the reason why is because our sex hormones are made out of cholesterol and fat and vitamin D.
Yeah.
So you need a buildup of these crucial elements inside the body. And if you deplete them too much, you might look good for a little while, but your body is going to start to break, especially for women, right? Women, just to be fertile, they need about 18 to 22% body fat. And that sort of increases a little bit as they get older. And it's actually very protective, right? We see that as people age, being 10 pounds underweight versus 10 pounds underweight is a little more dangerous because you have no reserve. So, maybe you've seen it in like loved ones or other people's family members where if you have someone who's really underweight and they're a lot older and God forbid pneumonia strikes them or something like that and they end up in the hospital, it's really hard for them to battle back because they've just got no reserves, right? So just chasing the aesthetic, I try to steer people away from. Like a lot of men and women will come to me and they say, I want to lose weight. And that's sort of a losing mentality to wake up every day and like want to lose. So what we try to do instead is you try to gain every day, gain the ability to do pull-ups, gain the ability to run sprints, or gain the ability to hold a longer plank. And in gaining all those physical attributes, you're going to reach the aesthetic goals that you're probably looking for.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
My pull-ups are trash. What should I do about that? So I think I work out like a pretty good amount now, like every day that I can during the week. Easier now, jobless. But even when I was at work, I would go to the gym at lunch every single day. And my biggest thing is like increasing weight I seem to just plateau very easily.
Sure.
What's like advice for someone like that?
Hire somebody like me and I'll help you out. No. But
No, you'd do it for free.
No,
Come
yeah,
on.
I would. You know me. No, truthfully, what it is there were all different methodologies to sort of bust through those plateaus, right? I would say first and foremost, if you're trying to gain more strength, you got to look at your nutrition. If you're not having the right macronutrients, so the breakdown of your carbohydrates, fat, and protein coming in, your body's not fueled, right? So you can't take a Ferrari and go fill it up with regular unleaded fuel, right? It's not going to run the right way. So if you want to turn yourself into a Ferrari performance-wise, you've got to have the nutrition coming in. For something specific like a pull-up or a major lift, I don't know, maybe like a dumbbell chest press or something like that, different methods like what we call drop sets are great, right?
Yeah.
So if you're doing chest press, one of your sets, usually your last one, you start at that heaviest load that you can handle and you work your way down. So let's say you're doing 60s on dumbbell chest press, you pump out as many as you can, then go down to 50 and then go down to 40 and get like 3 sets in that. And it just sort of breaks your body through that barrier. And there's a whole host of different methodologies that we use given the client's goals and basically what they can actually handle. Now, you don't want to do that all the time. It'll burn your body out, but there are different methods to go through to sort of break those plateaus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I heard about drop setting. I don't even know, when I was working out 8 years ago. Like, I think is some of the stuff pseudoscience, or does it actually work?
So there's a lot of bro science in the industry for sure,
100%.
right? But there's also a lot of empirical data on just sort of what we call progressive overload, right? That's sort of the most important thing. So there's really like 3 ways to progress yourself in the gym, right? You can either lift more weight, you can do more repetitions, or you can do the same weight and reps and sets in a shorter amount of time, right? Now, given your goals, you sort of look at what you're looking for. So if you're just looking to gain strength, okay, which is the kind of the first thing that everybody should do, is really just get as strong as they can to a certain point. You actually want to take longer rest intervals, go to failure on at least 1 or 2 sets, and use a little bit more sets or volume, right? So if you're used to doing, let's say, 2 sets of like 6 to 10 reps or 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps, it's a good idea to bump those sets up a little bit week over week. So what I'll often do is I'll start people with, like, if they're just trying to gain strength, let's say on a certain lift, maybe it's 3 sets to start for 5 reps. And then the next week, we go 4 sets for 5 reps.
Okay.
And then the next week, it's 5 sets for 5 reps, right? And then once they reach that total volume, usually around 5 sets, maybe more if their body can really handle it, then we reset, we go back to 3 sets. And instead of doing 5 reps with that given weight, they'll try 6 or up to 8, right? And then the next week, it's 4 sets of up to 8, right? Even just using the same weight, so that the parameters that are progressively overloading your body aren't always just the weight you're lifting, right? Does that
Okay.
make sense?
I think it does. Would you say more than anything, just having a program in place is worth more than anything?
That's definitely the biggest thing I see in the gym, with people who are just in there, is they're often program hopping. And I
Yeah.
always say the best program is simply the one that you'll stick to.
Yeah.
So it's really getting something down on paper that you're doing for anywhere from like 3 weeks to 3 months. And then the body, like, you remember P90X kind of came
Oh,
into
yeah.
the industry, right? So they were huge on like muscle confusion, right? And there's a little bit of truth to that. You do want to switch it up on your body. But for most of us, we need to compound the skill of strength week over week. So for example, if I was training a kid to learn how to play piano, and every time he came into the studio, we taught him a different song, he would learn how to play parts of all these different songs, but never really master one,
Yeah.
right? And that's sort of definitely one of the problems we see. Another one is we see people just sticking to the same routine for far too long. So I usually recommend anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months on the same program, and then switch it up over those time periods as soon as you see plateaus sort of hit.
Okay. All right. So you're gonna send me one right after this. I've been meaning to
Deal.
text you that.
Yeah.
I don't know why I
Deal.
haven't, because I've been kind of doing the same program. Like I'll switch up like an exercise here or there, but
Yeah.
I've essentially been doing the same thing in the gym for far too long. On the nutrition piece, like we could probably talk about like nutrition, American diet. That could be a 3-hour episode.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But like, your client comes to you first time, like, what do you tell them, like, that's not overwhelming, but that's like, for lack of a better term, digestible for them? Like, this
Yeah.
is what you got to do.
So
Like,
usually,
just stay.
yeah. So usually I won't lay nutrition on them in the beginning.
Okay.
I'll wait like 1 to 3 sessions. And then I'll start talking about like fueling their body. The biggest things that we really need to look at is adequate hydration, right? So getting like 80 to 100 ounces of water a day mixed with electrolytes. So it's really beneficial to make sure you're putting like some pink sea salt or just regular sea salt in your water, because just filtered water or any like branded water in its own right is actually going to dilute the system of its electrolytes. So, we're huge Tom Brady fans, obviously.
Yeah.
You ever notice what his water looked like on the sidelines?
I did not.
It was very cloudy, right? And the reason why is he had his electrolytes in them, right? He wasn't just drinking water. So when we're looking at hydration, we're looking at getting adequate water intake, but mixed with electrolytes. Now, you can do this in a more expensive way. You can buy mineral water, so things like Evian, Saratoga, those kind of stuff. They have the minerals already in them.
Okay.
Or you can just take some sea salt and put it right in. And then the next thing I try to accomplish with people is, once they're hydrating, is cutting out like processed foods or processed carbohydrates, right?
Yeah.
That's really the biggest killer in the American diet. A, they're cheap, right? And B, they're really easy to deal with. Like protein, you have to usually prepare, like you're cooking something, right? The processed carbohydrates, they're cheap and they're just usually readily available. The problem with processed carbs is that they spike our insulin, and our insulin is one of the most important hormones because we control it. And insulin, for those who don't know, is sort of your fat storing hormone. So as soon as you have something like a processed carbohydrate or something with a high glycemic index, it's going to spike your insulin. And now your body is in fat storing mode instead of fat burning mode. So hydration, I think, is number one. And then number two is cutting out processed foods, mostly processed carbs.
Where you at on like a beef stick, like a chops?
Yeah, so I think we have like our spectrum of healthy food, right?
Yeah.
I would much rather have everyone eat food the way that it's presented in nature.
100%.
As soon as it's opening from like a package, you're sort of no longer dealing with food. It's more like a food-like product.
Yeah.
Right. And that company, their job essentially, not to knock, all companies, some of them are great and offer great products, but most of them, like their job is to give you as minimal of food or as little food as they can for their highest margin. Right. And if they have shareholders, that's what they have to do.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're usually getting something that isn't full of nutrition, that isn't really going to feed your body. And we also call it like dead food. Our gut microbiome plays a huge role in our mood levels. So a lot of people don't know this, but like 90% of your serotonin, your main mood stabilizer, is produced in your gut. And most processed foods are dead foods. And so they don't feed our gut flora, right? And that's why I think too, we're seeing a huge sort of influx in depression and anxiety in a lot of our population because our guts are so off kilter.
Yeah. I mean, everything starts at the gut. I started getting interested in this stuff a while ago. Corey Hoffmaker was like the first book I read.
Absolutely. The Warrior. Absolutely.
Yeah. So like I've been into this stuff for a while. It's funny, and I've known it forever. I don't do as much, and I think there's so many people like this. Like life is hectic, and I don't know. I have a problem with change. So like I know what to do, and I don't do what I should as much as I should.
It's often hard to do the right thing in life, right?
Oh, yeah.
But usually it pays dividends on the back end. In the short
definitely.
term, right, you take the easy out, but in the long term, it usually is worth it.
Yeah. Well, I think about my kids, and I'm just like, I have to like live as long as possible now.
Amen. Yeah.
It wasn't an option. Like before, it was like, whatever, let's ride this till the wheels fall off. Like I gotta hang around now, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. They're counting on you.
Yeah. All right. So this is one of your favorite things. If you talk to Jeff and you get in a long enough conversation, probably coming up. You're a big investments guy in general. I think like you're always kind of on the ball with that. And I'll always ask you like, what are you looking at? This is not investment advice, just so you know.
Yes.
But tell me like why you're so passionate about it. Like why should people get involved?
Yeah. Well, essentially in like 2015, when I started to look for a home to buy for myself, again, I'm a nerd. And so with anything, I really did a deep dive in understanding interest rates and, finances overall. I'm very lucky and fortunate. My brother and my father are both in finance. So I sort of have them as a background. And what I started to realize is, we all talk about this thing called inflation, right? And essentially our inflation is caused by the printing of money. And our Federal Reserve has a mandate to inflate away the value of our dollar at 2% per year. And so what this means is that from the day you're born to the day you die, the spending power of your dollar inflates away by 50%. So, and this is a mandate by the government. They purposefully are doing this. It helps the economy grow, but it also hurts the working class. So if I gave you $1 million in 1970, or you had $1 million today, when was it worth more? Right. Okay. Have figured out is that they need to hold assets that outdo the pace of inflation. Right now, our grandparents, they were able to essentially just buy like CDs, right? High yield CDs that paid maybe like 9% or 6%.
Yeah.
Now, if inflation is 2% and you have a CD that is paying 6%, you're making 4% a year on your money. So if you just hold $100 and then next year, right, if inflation's 2%, it's worth 98, and then it compounds exponentially down. But if you're holding an asset like a high yield CD or a bond that is worth like 6%, you're outdoing that rate of inflation by 4%. So your $100 went from $100 to $104, and it compounds exponentially forward, right? So our grandparents were able to do that. Now, because of things like the global financial crisis and COVID, inflation has run rampant, right? In the last 4 years, we've printed enough money that we've inflated away 25 years of people's labor. So for like our parents who saved a ton of money, in the last 4 years, they've seen that spending power cut by like 40%, right? And so you're always looking sort of for the alpha asset. What is going to outdo the rate of inflation? Our grandparents, maybe they did, like I said, CDs or bonds, and those were okay. And then our parents' generation, they really could do real estate. Like if you were able to buy real estate and it was annualizing at like 4 to 6% a year, you were still outdoing the rate of inflation. You had that asset that protected your wealth, right? So Bitcoin is the next alpha asset. So Bitcoin is annualizing at around like 20 to 40% a year. And it is a new technology, right? The underlying technology is the blockchain that has this asset on top of it that allows the user to be essentially their own bank, right? Like Bank of America.
Yeah.
It allows you to be your own Venmo, right? You can transfer that money sort of back and forth. And it's outside what we call sovereign guardrails, right? So we see all over the world, if you vote for the wrong person or you say the wrong thing or you, do something the government doesn't like, they can squander your funds, right? As close to home as us a couple of years ago, the Canadian
I was
truckers,
gonna say,
right?
didn't they do something with their Bitcoin as well, though?
Well, when they went to protest, the Canadian government actually shut down their bank accounts.
Yeah,
Right. So think about it. You got your whole life savings in these bank accounts and you're protesting peacefully, right? Something that you disagree with, which, I think is every human right. Right. And the government didn't like that. So they started garnishing their wages and sort of shut down their ability to bank themselves.
Yeah.
And so this is where Bitcoin comes in, because nobody has the right or can engineer a way to stop you from moving Bitcoin. It is outside of the guardrails of our sovereign monetary systems, or what we call fiat currency, right? And so the next really cool thing about Bitcoin is that, like, a company like Facebook, they took social energy, they centralized it, and then they monetized it into $1 trillion company. Okay. Google took information that was free to everybody, they centralized it, and then they monetized it into $1 trillion company.
Yeah.
Okay. Apple, we've got your, iPhone here. They took hardware, they centralized it, right? People used to walk around with a calendar, calculator, all these different things. They centralized the hardware into one device, a camera as well, and they turned it into $1 trillion company. Now they own something that ideally we would all have ownership of. Bitcoin is a decentralized application that allows all of us to have ownership in this multi-trillion-dollar asset class.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually have no follow-up questions, but that's the pitch right there. If you want to know more, like, reach out to Jeff directly. He will tell you. But I wanted to give him the floor for that because I know you believe in it. He actually gave me some for my wedding gift, so it's done well. So
You still have it.
I still have it.
Yes,
Yeah,
I give it to everyone for their wedding
yeah,
gifts.
that's one thing I will not be moving anytime soon.
There you go.
All right, we did a lot here. Got to give you the floor. All right, so we've known each other a long time. I don't know when this happened. I think the first time you told me, we were on actually a bachelor party. Funny enough,
Yeah.
I'm a God guy now.
Yeah.
And I just want to know how did it happen? What's your personal story with it? And it seems to be driving you now and just kind of the wind at your sails. So tell me, tell the people the story.
Yeah, no. So training was sort of the first door that opened discipline for me, right? And sort of physical freedom. Bitcoin was that next sort of door that opened financial freedom. But, through a really sort of tough period in my life, I knew that there was something more, right? You can't just live to look good in the gym and get really rich. That can't be what humans need to strive for. The world would be a terrible place. And it often is, because that's what people are looking for, right? And so in the depths of some despair, I was going through sort of a spiritual journey, right? And looking into, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha and Buddhism, and checking out what he had to say, and reading the Vedas and Upanishads and what Hinduism was all about, and the Quran. I'd read twice in college for an Islam class. And when I got to the gospel and understanding what Jesus was all about, and that this person actually lived, right? There's almost no credible historians who don't admit that this guy actually walked the face of the earth. Okay, so Jesus walked the face of the earth. Well, what did he say? And if you read, Matthew chapter 4, 5, and 6, you get what's called the Sermon on the Mount. And it's basically the most ethical speech ever given. Almost every code of ethics since what Jesus had to say is sort of a footnote. Love your enemies, right? How profound is that, right?
Yeah.
That's a solution to the world's problem. Imagine if we could be humble enough and get rid of our ego to love our enemies. And so as I started reading more about what Jesus had to say and really realized that he was a true historical figure, right, who actually walked the face of the earth, he became unbelievably credible to me. And so in his credibility of the fact that he actually lived and what he taught, and then how he died, right? He died on the cross, and on the cross, he said, to his persecutors and murderers, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And so in the hour of his most pain, right, he asked for forgiveness for these people. And like, you know me before, and I know you, like that is something that almost no human can accomplish. Like, how can you do that, right? And so again, his credibility just sort of went through the roof. Now, the hardest part for me was the resurrection, right? It was like, oh man, like this seems like a ghost story, right? How could this man actually have risen from the dead? And, Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 15 that he presented himself to 500 people over the next 40 days. And not one of his disciples, only one of his disciples stood with him at the cross. The other 11 abandoned him. They didn't come back to him until he came back from the dead. Now, the Romans and who killed him and the Jews who persecuted him, they had every reason to make sure that his body stayed buried.
Yeah.
Right? Because they didn't want the promise that he said, which is, I will be back in 3 days, to come to fulfillment. They wanted to squash what they saw as an uprising. And so they buried Jesus in a very famous tomb called the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. And they stuck 2 guards outside of it. Right? And again, they had every reason to make sure he did not get out. And he gets out. And again, he presents himself to 500 people over 40 days. And through that journey, you get this explosion of faith. And so just sitting there one night, I simply asked God and Jesus to come into my heart and fill me with the Holy Spirit. And I was like overcome. It's going to bring me to tears a little bit. Overcome with this just sense of calmness that, you and I, as men on this earth, people on this earth, we are not fully in control.
Yeah,
and
that's for sure.
When you give up that sort of sense of like, oh, I need to be perfect in this manner, or I need to do this, or I need to be this financially successful, and you just sort of give that away, this peace really sort of takes a hold of you. And that moment, it was like very clear that I should be living the way that Jesus taught. I should be loving my enemies. I should be helping feed the poor and clothe the naked and, visit the sick and the imprisoned. And as I started to do those things that he called us to do as children of God, my life and my feeling and just sort of everything that I was going wrong in my life radically changed.
Yeah. Well, I think if you're following like the word of God, it's basically do good and do good for others, right? And I think that message can be used whether you follow God or not. And what I do like about like the worship of like God as opposed to other people, I think the way we are as a society now is like, who's your deity, right? Is it a
Yes.
politician? Is it a celebrity?
Absolutely.
Is it this idea? Like you're
Money, yeah.
What is it? Where
Yeah.
it's just like the way God works, it kind of structures everything to where you're serving that person, but also like others around you through him. So, I mean, I haven't got there yet. So we'll see someday. Maybe I'll hit the church again. But like, I understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah. So that's the thing is like, you don't have to go to church, right? It's a great thing to do. And you should once you get in, because it's great to build community with like-minded people. But what Jesus told us is that we are the church, right? Just us as people. And when we come together, we should represent the best of humanity and not the worst, right? And so like you were saying, where humans sort of tend to idolize different things and all of them will fail you, right? So if you idolize your beauty, right, it's going to age. If you idolize your wallet or your stock portfolio, right, it could become a mess, right? And so if you hold these things on an altar, all of them will eventually fail you, right? And, I heard one time, I forget who said it, but we are all made in the image of God. And so just like a glove is made in the image of a hand, if you try to stick a foot in the glove, how useful is the glove? Right? Yeah. If you try to stick your money in there, how useful is it? Right. And if you don't have the hand in the glove, how useful is the glove? It's not very useful. Right.
Yeah.
So by filling yourself with what you were made in the image of, right, you become a very useful tool for humanity. Right.
All right. I like it, man. I think that's a good wrap.
All right.
I appreciate you doing this today. Jeff Quinn, personal trainer extraordinaire, Bitcoin enthusiast. Guy loves God. How much Creed have you listened to? Has that gone up or has that stayed static? Because I'm actually in kind of a Creed phase myself.
Yeah, no, you love Creed. I love all the worship music for sure. I was actually blessed to meet Cece Weenus. She's a 2-time or maybe more winning Grammy gospel artist. I met her in Nashville. I happened to wander into a church when I was down there at a Bitcoin conference. And she was there. And so it was really cool. So I love her music. Yeah, there's a bunch of great music.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate it, man.